Welcome back to another UFC fight prediction video. In this video, I'll be predicting the main card fights for UFC Fight Night on ESPN Plus, Ngannou versus Dos Santos. So without further ado, let's get into our first fight prediction on the main card. So in our first fight, we have in the light heavyweight division, Alonzo Menifield versus Paul Craig. So looking at this fight, it's another fight for Paul Craig. It's like follows the same narrative with like all my predictions involving Paul Craig. And most times, like 9 times out of 10, or at least so far with his fights, most times he's the more technical fighter and really the better fighter all around. But it's that mental part of him that kind of fades. And right now, he is coming off a pretty decent win. And it's a change of narrative a little bit. Not really, because he's still up and down in his career. Like he might have a decent performance or a performance that kind of changes the narrative. Then instantly, once he wins, he loses his next fight. So right now, he's lost one and then he just won one. So by that pattern, he's most likely going to lose again. But not even just off that. Looking at the fighter he's fighting, Alonzo Menifield, he's not no real young spring chicken. Menifield is 31. Had a kind of late start to MMA. Kind of really late start to sports because he was an orphan and all that stuff. But looking right now, like I said, Paul Craig was 6'4". Menifield's about 6 feet tall. He'll have a huge height and reach advantage over Menifield. Huge experience advantage over Menifield. But Menifield has something that Paul Craig really hasn't been able to get over as far as in his UFC career. He's an athletic, physical fighter. A lot of power, a lot of athleticism. I don't really think his skills are all that really. He's really not that finely tuned of a fighter or athlete or whatever you want to call him. But he does have that power. He does have that athleticism. And he is undefeated. So I see that causing Paul Craig issue more than it should. And if he uses all his tools, he should be able to beat Menifield. But I see him kind of caving to that pressure, seeing an undefeated fighter, seeing that physical athleticism, fearing that power, and it's kind of caving in this fight. I think Menifield's going to do it in his typical fashion, get a first round TKO. But Paul Craig is certainly a good bet in this fight with all his skills, with all of his advantages going into this fight. But I'm going to lean to Menifield just because of Paul Craig's inconsistency and more of his patterns. So in this fight, I got Alonzo Menifield to be a first round TKO. Now on to our next fight we have in the lightweight division, Drew Dober versus Marco Polo Reyes. So looking at this fight, Drew Dober is a solid veteran of this weight class, solid veteran in the UFC, but he's kind of been in the same spot his whole career as far as in the UFC. Marco Polo Reyes had some success. I think he was, before his last loss, he was on a good winning streak. It was like 3 or 4 fight winning streak, so he was looking good. But between these two, just get to the point, like how they match up. Drew Dober is a solid fighter. He more so falls into the striker category. His background is in striking. He does have some decent enough grappling, but what he mostly does is he strikes. He doesn't really mix in too many takedowns. He is pretty defensively sound, defending takedowns and defending grappling, but he's not really one to really initiate very many takedowns, and that's going to favor Marco Polo Reyes, who I feel has heavier hands, heavier kicks, more volume. So he hits harder, he does more value, lands better shots. And I think that's what's going to happen in this fighting. Polo Reyes is going to be the fastest fighter. He's going to be have the heavier hands, the faster hands. He's going to land more shots and throw more value. So he's going to be throwing the heavier shots and be landing more. And that's going to allow him to win, especially with Drew Dober not really mixing in takedowns. And really been maybe the biggest issue for Marco Polo Reyes. Like in the last fight, he was looking real good until he got taken down. He looked horrible. I don't think Drew Dober is going to mix in any takedowns. So this, like I said, it's going to play on the feet. Polo Reyes is going to land the harder shots and he's going to land more shots. So in this fight, I got Marco Polo Reyes via decision. Now on to our next fight we have in the lightweight division, Roosevelt Roberts versus Vince Pichel. So looking at Vince Pichel, he's kind of had a weird career. I think he was out for a long period of time, came back. When you look at his career, I think he only had 2 losses in his whole career, or at least in the UFC, he only has 2 losses. And they're both with 2 solid wrestler, sambo, grappler type of fighter. Like he lost to Gregor Gillespie last, and he lost to Rustam Khabilov. So he only lost to solid wrestler / sambo fighter. So there's really not too many weaknesses on him. I'm not saying he's like the best guy in the whole division or this and that, but he's certainly a very technical fighter and certainly an underrated fighter, more so because of his inactivity or lack of activity. But he has some solid power in his striking. He's sharp, good with counters, good with elbows, good grappler. His takedowns are pretty solid as well. His grappling, heavy on the top, good at ground and pound. So he's a really solid fighter all around. It's just more so his inactivity. But looking at the fight he's fighting Roosevelt Roberts, he's fighting a solid prospect. But nothing on Roosevelt Roberts' side. In his last performance, he did not look that impressed. I think it was the decision. It was clear that he won, but it was a fight that he was supposed to go out there and look exceptional, but he really didn't look exceptional. He looked vulnerable, and he looked like he needed some more room for growth. And this is a very dangerous fight for him to have this early into his UFC career. I think he's 2 fights in the UFC, amazing performance, and like a lackluster performance. And now you give him his toughest test by far, who can challenge him in all these areas. But if I look at who's more technical, who is the better fighter, in my opinion, I would say Vince Pichel. I would have to say that Vince Pichel is the better fighter between these two at this given moment, given their skill set, their abilities, their records, their resumes, all of that. But looking at Roosevelt Roberts being, 25, and not like a 25 about turn 26, he's like straight up 25. And given his frame, given his like build, and given how, he has a high ceiling, he has a good frame, he already has a good base of skills, solid boxing, solid grappling, pretty decent wrestling as well. So he has a good frame, and he's very young, and these young fighters can evolve so quickly. Like, he might have one bad performance, then 2 or 3 months later, he has a hard training camp, and this changes, evolve so much. And Vince Pichel is I think almost 10 years, if not 10 years older than him. So he's kind of old for this lightweight weight class. Maybe a heavyweight, that's in your prime. But at a lightweight, 35 is kind of pushing it. You're kind of at the end of the line. And he is giving his best to try to stick around, stay relevant, and get better and be a solid fighter. But it's still, age is certainly favoring Roosevelt Roberts. And he certainly has the higher ceiling and the more ability to grow in that short period of time. I think we've already given his frame, his length, his boxing base, his grappling. I think he can use that length to keep Vince Pichel at bay. He has good movement, and that can keep Vince Pichel from getting in and landing truly heavy shots, and more so beating him with volume and walking him into these heavier shots. And I think the grappling, he can scramble with Vince Pichel. Maybe Vince Pichel will be the better grappler, but I think Roosevelt Roberts should have success being able to defensively scramble with Vince Pichel, keep him on the feet, or keep it in an advantageous position so he could more so maximize or utilize his range to the fullest and win this fight. It's going to be a tough, gritty fight, I believe. But I think his youth and his ability to grow is going to help in this fight. So I'm going to lean into youth. He has that talent and he has the time. And I'm sure he knows how dangerous a fighter Vince Pichel is, so he's going to prepare for that. And he's going to come in to make a statement. It's going to be an impressive fight, but it's going to be a tough, gritty fight. But I'm going to have to go with Roosevelt Roberts winning this one via decisions. But again, Vince Pichel is a solid bet in this fight. But I'm going to have to go with Roosevelt Roberts via decision. Now to our next fight we have in the welterweight division, Damian Maia versus Anthony Rocco Martin. So looking at this fight, Tony Martin has some solid grappling, solid striking. He's been looking like a beast at welterweight, was more of a middle tier or non-factor at lightweight. But since coming up to welterweight, he's been a huge factor and is on a hot streak. But one thing I really haven't seen him challenged in is somebody really challenging him with wrestling, somebody really challenging him with grappling. And Damian Maia is going to do that. He's going to be pressuring. Damian Maia don't care how good your takedown defense, don't care how good this is or how good that is. Damian Maia will pressure you. He will throw heavy shots. His striking may not be textbook, but he is effective with it, and he can drop you, he can hurt you with his striking. He's unorthodox. And we saw him we saw Tony Martin get hurt with these unorthodox shots. I think it was one of these fights with not the Irish, but the Australian kid did hurt him with like unorthodox shots. I think Damian Maia can catch him some of these unorthodox shots because he's not really textbook, but he is effective at throwing these unorthodox shots, mixing in takedowns. He is big, he is powerful. He might not look physically strong, but he is very grappler strong. And he did come from middleweight, so you see a lot of time he's muscle around these welterweights like with ease. No matter if they're strong or this, he managed to muscle them around. And I think he's going to challenge Rocco Martin. I mean, he's not going to just shoot one shot or just shoot two. He's going to shoot as many as he needs to get you down. He's going to pressure you as much as you need until he gets tired. But I think Damian Maia is eventually going to be able to get Rocco Martin down in this fight, be able to attack with some submissions. And I think once he gets him down, he's going to be able to control him and show that he's just leagues above in the grappling. And I think late in the not even third round, I think it's going to be second round, I think Damian Maia is finally able to break him down with his heavy hip-crushing guard passes and just smother him and eventually just submit him, just wear him down, like I said, and submit him. So in this fight, I got Damian Maia via second round submission. Now to our co-main event, we have in the flyweight division, Jussier Formiga versus Joseph Benavidez. So looking at this fight, this is a rematch of a fight that happened when the flyweight division was first created. Joseph Benavidez, all those years back, ran right through Formiga. This was too good for him or too much for him. Just pretty much ran through him. I think it was either first round or second round TKO, just all one-sided. Now, years later, Formiga has improved a lot with his striking, with his grappling, his overall MMA fight IQ. And Joseph Benavidez hasn't improved as much, but he still was already leagues above him and still managed to prove some. Got a win over Henry Cejudo, got some wins over this, and still in the last couple fight show that he's still very much relevant in this weight class and that he's not going to go away so easily. So looking at this fight, look at Joseph Formiga. You know he's evolved so much. His game plan still mostly revolves around kind of being a backpack, trying to take you down, trying to control you, or gaining respect for his striking, so he can kind of turn into a backpack. Really at this level, maybe lower levels, he can submit or finish people, but at this level, he's more so a backpack. He's kind of a take you down, get control, and just ride you out to a decision. Might have some little decent ground and pound there, but he's more of a decision grappling type of fighter. And against Joseph Benavidez, he might not have been the most impressive wrestler in his wrestling career, but he transitioned very well to grappling in MMA. He's very good at scrambles. He's very good at with his takedown offense. Very sneaky with his takedown offense. Good grabbing, good submission of his own offensively and defensively. And Joseph Benavidez has always been good in the scramble, so he should be able to defend Formiga's takedowns pretty decently or pretty well, handle those pretty well. Even if he gets in bad position, he's able to scramble, should be able to scramble out of them, get on the feet. Then I think on the feet, he's still the fighter with more power. He's the more experienced striker. He's still the fast striker. And really just in every area, he's just better on feet. I think he should be able to pick a shot well, keep the fight on feet for the most part, handle himself well in the scrambles, and land the bigger, harder telling shots and really dictate the pace of the fight on the feet. I don't think he's going to finish Formiga this time because Formiga has certainly improved and he's going to be mixing and grappling. So Benavidez is really going to have to constantly be aware of it. So he's not going to really be load up as much as he wants to like in the past. But he's still going to be a smart fight. And I got Joseph Benavidez winning this one via decision. So in this fight, I have Joseph Benavidez via decision. Now on to our main event. We have in the heavyweight division a title eliminator, Francis Ngannou versus Junior Dos Santos. So looking at this fight, this really is a 50-50 fight. And it could go either way depending on who enforces their style the best or who comes with the best game plan or whoever comes with the best approach. Because this fight is really 50-50, especially being at heavyweight, especially given their power. So it could really go either way. Junior Dos Santos' side, he can, if he utilizes his boxing, mix up his jab high and low, come with the right hand or overhand, he can certainly have success. As Francis Ngannou stands so upright, hands low, especially when you mix it up, you might get his hands to drop even lower, come over top with the right hand or the overhand. He should be able to land a big cracking shot, and given Dos Santos' power and given the fact that all these tools are in his arsenal, he can have success with those. Francis Ngannou on the other side, he has power. Really all he has to do is land, even just throw a little bit of a jab out there to keep that range, to keep Dos Santos at bay, being a slightly bigger fighter, slightly taller fighter, slightly stronger fighter, be able to stick that jab out there, keep Dos Santos at bay, back him up. And then when Dos Santos backs up, a lot of times in his cage, he just turns his head to the side, exposing that behind the air, he could land a big shot right there, and it could be all she wrote. So this fight can really go either way. It's just who can better set up their big shots or who can better dictate the range. Dos Santos does have some bit of wrestling, does have some good leg kicks, but he really doesn't utilize either that much. So I think it really comes down to more of a striking boxing/boxing match more so anything. Dos Santos might throw a spinning back hit in there or spinning heel kick to the head here and there, but more so it's going to come down to who can impose the range, who can impose their will or control the range and impose their will, and who can better set up their boxing style strikes. And like I said, it could go either way, but I feel like both have the momentum right now, but I feel like Francis Ngannou is going to be able to bring out the tendencies of Dos Santos. And though Dos Santos isn't really as worn as we thought he was, especially given this streak he's on right now, I think Francis Ngannou's power just in a different league. And Dos Santos might kind of lose his confidence seeing somebody bigger than him, somebody imposing on him, like he did in the Stipe fight. Even though Stipe wasn't bigger and imposing, he kind of just backed up for no reason against Stipe. He just kind of fell into that tendency where he just put his back against the cage, throws an ugly check hook, and then kind of turns his head to the side and just got caught. I think it's going to happen this early, but I think over time that tendency, like I said, is going to come out, and Francis Ngannou's going to be opposing in this fight, be sticking the jab, be in his face, landing big shots, and causing Dos Santos to give up the back foot. And I think this time Francis Ngannou's not going to walk over his punches, so he's going to be able to at least be in a position where he can better evade those counter shots. And when he's on offense, he'll be the one with the heavier shots. He'll be the one landing, in position better to land his big shots, I would say. And in those positions, it's only going to take so many shots for him to put anyone down, given his power, given his position. And like I said, it's going to be probably a competitive fight. But once Francis Ngannou starts to really put Dos Santos on the back foot, I think that's when the fight's going to start to, play itself out. And I think in the second round, Francis Ngannou lands that big shot with Dos Santos on the back foot, back close to the cage, gets caught with like an overhand or uppercut, then follows up with some ground and pound and gets him out of there. So in this fight, I have Francis Ngannou via second round TKO. And that concludes my fight predictions for the main card of UFC Fight Night on ESPN Plus, Ngannou versus Dos Santos. And as always, thanks for watching.